Well, I guess it was about what you would expect at Barcelona, a circuit, of course, that all the teams know really well. Max Verstappen even went to the trouble earlier in the year to do a few laps in I think it was a Porsche GT3 car with his dad, Jos. It'd be quite interesting to see what Jos thought about it all, actually. A good detailed preparation, Ayrton Senna-like sort of thing Ayrton would do, having not run at Barcelona at all this year. But let's continue the Max theme, because despite that, it was a very scrappy day for Verstappen and Red Bull Honda at Barcelona. Max in the morning managed to hit some curbs and do a bit of damage under the car. And then in the afternoon, he did the same thing on his last lap on the medium tyre with the fuel load on board. Very, very quick lap, gotta say, but a bit messy, a bit scrappy. I guess you could write all that off and say, well, if you're going to do all that, sort of, as Lewis was last year, maybe the year before, do it on a Friday when it doesn't really matter, get it out of your system. There's nothing wrong in that, but it's just that Max has such a good chance this year with such a great race car beneath him that you would be expecting him by now to be pretty polished in every area and to just be quick here, quick there, do this, do that. But it wasn't that. It was a sort of day where you'd need to get away from it and say, right, let's start again, reboot, no more mistakes. Let's not use any more curb than we need to. Let's just get on with it and win this Grand Prix. That's presumably what his attitude will be going into tomorrow. We'll see if that works. But then let's put all that in the context of the weekend so far. As you'd expect in Barcelona, everything really close. And the part of Friday practice that I think matters the most is the back end of FP2, when generally speaking, most of the runners, not all of them, but most of the runners are out on the medium tyre with a fuel load on board. How do they all compare at that point? Well, at that point, Max Verstappen was actually quickest on the road, 22.5. He did that 22.5 right at the end, just before the checkered flag. And obviously it was an on-the-limit lap with the tyres a little bit old. He went over curb, damaged the front wing. That's what I was talking about a little bit earlier, limped back into the pits. So you could argue that wasn't really a genuine 22.5, because if that's what it takes to do it, he ain't going to be doing it in the race. Lewis Hamilton at 22.6 looked absolutely on top of things all day, really quick on light fuel on soft tyres, really quick with fuel on board on soft tyres, and really quick on the medium tyre with fuel as well, 22.6. As I say, alongside Max's rather scrappy 22.5. So Lewis looking superlative at the moment around Barcelona. P3, no surprise, Valtteri Bottas in the other Mercedes, a little bit quicker than Lewis, perhaps in a couple of areas. I think he's always been very good out of the last chicane. He's very good at rotation there on the second part of the chicane, the right-hander, getting the car nice and straight. That's always been a good point for Valtteri. But then, of course, Lewis's raison d'etre on this planet Earth is what he does out of turn 2 into turn 3. And there he was just, well, he was I think only Charles Leclerc today was doing what Lewis is doing out of there, which is just giving it the perfect amount of mid-corner rotation and on the left hand of the second part of that first chicane as they came out. So Lewis is coming out a fraction straighter than, say, Valtteri Bottas, which gives him a slightly more accelerative run up the hill into 3. And of course, the object going into 3 is not to have to go anywhere near the center of the road on entry, but just keep it nice and tight. But you can only do that if you've got the car beautifully flat and responding to everything you're doing. What you don't want is that sort of thing, obviously. And that's what Lewis does all day around Barcelona. That's what he is as a racing driver. And it's so good to watch him there again, and how well he was driving that bit of road. And that showed, I think, in the lap times today. Let's have a look at some of those other times on fuel. We had Charles Leclerc really quick as well, 23.0 in the Ferrari on a fuel load on the medium tyre, and he was quick too on the soft tyre. They went out at the beginning of the afternoon session on softs on light fuel, and doing that, Charles Leclerc did an 18.3 to Lewis's 18.1. I'm looking down here, and that's the same time 18.3 as Valtteri Bottas did. So Charles quick on the red tyre, the soft tyre with no fuel, and very quick on the medium tyre with fuel on board, looking really strong. And of course, this is going to be inevitably a big weekend for his teammate Carlos Sainz, Spanish driver in a Ferrari for the first time in Spain. What could be bigger? So in some respects, quite a lot of obviously pressure on Carlos to deliver in front of his crowd, but equally, I say crowd, TV audience, but equally pressure on on Charles Leclerc, because where around Barcelona, a circuit that everybody knows incredibly well, where would you be quicker than a driver like Carlos Sainz? Well, at the moment, Charles Leclerc has found one or two areas. And as I said earlier, I think one of those areas is the way he's just getting the car beautifully exiting out of turn 2 into turn 3. So that is a really, really important part of the racetrack. And it's already showing a lot of differences, I think, between teammates and between drivers. Looking at some of the other times, let's focus on the medium tyre. Carlos Sainz did a 23.1, so he wasn't far away with a fuel load on the medium tyre, but on the soft tyre, Charles was significantly quicker. Carlos did an 18.6 and Charles an 18.3. Now that could have been traffic. It could have been just getting the temperatures absolutely right in the car. It could have been a number of things around Barcelona on a Friday. So we shouldn't read too much into that. You'd have to be crazy not to think that Carlos Sainz won't be quick in qualifying tomorrow. But the good news is there for Ferrari fans, that is, that the Ferrari appears to be a pretty good car, capable maybe this time of really racing McLaren hard. So let's have a look and see what McLaren were doing. Lando Norris 23.2, and sadly at the moment, in terms of McLaren-Mercedes performance, all we can do is talk about what Lando's doing, because throughout the afternoon, unless there was something going on that none of us know about, Daniel Ricciardo was unbelievably slow in the other car. Maybe he was working on some new dramatic thing and the car was just chock full of fuel throughout the day. I don't know. We shouldn't be too critical, I suppose, because Daniel has done what he's done in the past. But in terms of Daniel getting traction for 2021 after this rather shaky start to the year, Friday didn't look very good either. So let's focus on Lando. 23.2, as I say, on the medium tyre, on fuel, with a fuel load in the second half of FP2. That's a pretty good time. Carlos Sainz 23.1, just as a reminder. Lando Norris 23.2. Charles Leclerc 23.0, so pretty close. But on the light fuel runs in the afternoon, Lando didn't really seem to get in a lap. So all we can look at is how competitive he was with fuel on board. Pierre Gasly right up there as well, 23.7. I say right up there, just a couple of tenths shy of Lando with fuel on board, but also very good, 18.5 on soft tyres with light fuel. Fernando Alonso, obviously a big story coming to the Spanish Grand Prix after that race he put in Portugal. And it was interesting to see that he began the weekend exactly the same way. Everybody else out on the hard tyre this morning, but Fernando out on the soft, getting that feeling for grip in the car. And again, I just reiterate, I think that is, who am I to say it, but certainly when, in my experience of being involved with racing drivers and race teams, in the situation that Fernando's in, there's nothing like soft tyre grip to give you confidence and feel for the car and the conditions. And that's what he did again. He's the only driver out there on the soft tyre, and full marks to him for bucking the trend, I guess is the way to phrase it. In the end, he was very good. I mean, he did an 18.5 on light, with light fuel load on the soft tyre compared to his teammate Esteban Ocon, 18.4. And that's a quick time. Again, just as a reminder, Charles Leclerc, 18.3. And that made them like fourth or fifth quickest on light fuel at the back end of the day on the soft tyre. So very impressive performance from Alpine and from both the drivers, Esteban Ocon too. We shouldn't forget about that. I mean, he is really good, as we've been saying many times on this channel. And then interestingly, given what he did in the morning on the soft tyre, Fernando also ran the soft tyre for most of the afternoon. He just put in a long run on that tyre. And with fuel on board on the soft tyre, he was fourth quickest, 23.2. Now, not that many drivers did that sort of run on the soft tyre, so it's not a fair comparison to say that he was fourth quickest. But the lap time, 23.2, not bad. Sergio Perez, 23.1. Charles Leclerc, 22.9. Lewis Hamilton, 22.9. Just as a reminder, that is on the soft tyre with fuel on board. And Max Verstappen doing the same thing, 23.2, same lap time, Esteban Ocon 23.4. So the news there is Fernando Alonso right up there. He's got Esteban Ocon speed, and the Alpine in general is looking again to be a very competitive car. Another driver who looked really good next to his teammate and pretty good overall was Sebastian Vettel in the Aston Martin, continuing the momentum that began in Portugal on Friday and Saturday and then faded somewhat on Sunday. But Sebastian pretty quick throughout the day. So you could say top 10 thereabouts, and looking again like a guy who's going to get into Q3 at least. So a promising weekend for him. So conclusions from today, as I say, the big thing for me was just a messy day for Max Verstappen. He did damage the car twice, and then when he was out going for a light fuel run on the soft tyre at the beginning of FP2, he was on a quick lap and then just braked much too late, going into the hairpin, ran wide and then aborted the lap. So that's why you don't see him at the top of the times from Friday, because that time that he did, that 18.7, which made him halfway down the field, was done on medium tyres when they then went out to do some race runs. So that isn't representative of his speed, as I've said. So it was a bit of a messy day. He is right there, Max Verstappen that is. It is incredibly close between the two Mercedes drivers. Sergio Perez always just within a tenth or 2/10 of Max. And it'll be between those two teams tomorrow. For me, the most interesting thing will be, again, Lando Norris versus the Ferraris and whether or not Daniel Ricciardo can pick up some pace on Saturday. And equally, who will take the pole out of those four guys. Right now, you got to say it's on Lewis Hamilton, but the pace, the outright pace, would appear still fractionally to be with Max Verstappen and Red Bull, providing he can have a nice, homogeneous, smooth day on Saturday. Good to see Rubens Barrichello in the paddock with his son Eduardo, who's racing in the Formula Renault race. Quite unusual to see Formula Renault, now rebranded as Formula Alpine, obviously, on the race card for a Grand Prix weekend. So full marks to Liberty for doing that and showing it and putting it out on the world feed as well. Always good to see that. Anyway, tomorrow's another day. Catch up with you then.